Good morning, everybody. It's Lisa Schaff at the OMA. Happy, what is it today? Tuesday to you, and welcome. We're going to talk about recruiting tips and advice from a professional recruiter today. And if you'll just permit me a few minutes here to tee up some housekeeping, then we'll get underway with our content and our subject matter expert. So, you know that we are using the GoToWebinar system today, and if you have any technical trouble whatsoever, the GoToWebinar help desk is standing by, and I'll give you that number, 800-263-6317. We did email to you this morning a copy of today's presentation, so it would either be in your inbox or while we're on this presentation, you can download it. You can download the handout right from the dashboard. Let's see, your audio lines are muted right now. If you have, and I've talked to Taylor about how he wants to handle questions, and he'd love to have your questions come in as we roll along. So don't be shy about typing your questions right there into your dashboard as we go. All right, I think that's it for housekeeping. So Rust Belt Recruiting, isn't that an interesting name for the company, is a new OMA member as of this year. So a virtual applause for Rust Belt Recruiting becoming a member and supporter of the Ohio Manufacturers Association, and thus Ohio Manufacturers. So when he suggested that he wanted to talk to us about his side, you know, we're all in the trenches and facing the issues of talent management. He's in a different trench, but managing the issues from the other side. And so we were curious about that topic, and we're able to work out this webinar today. So let's see, what else do I want to say? Taylor is the president of Rust Belt Recruiting. Some of what he loves about his job is the economic and social impact, the workforce development, of course, loves Ohio manufacturing, and also community revitalization. So really interesting profile for Taylor. And before I go on, let me just give a quick shout out to my colleague, Denise Locke, OMA staff member who runs all the operations for webinars. So a little shout out to Denise this morning. And with that, Taylor, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to flip to our first slide here. I appreciate you spending some of your, morning with me. As Lisa said, I am the president of Rust Belt Recruiting. My name is Taylor Evans, and the topic today is why you. Why you? In today's job market, there are so many options out there, and right now it's a candidate's market. So why you? You've got to build the case for your workplace, and throughout the course of this webinar, we're going to see some of those points. And so I appreciate you committing part of your morning, and let's just jump into it. Just an overview of what we're going to discuss today. Obviously, we are recruiters, recruiting and staffing. So we're going to talk about Rust Belt's resume, just so you have some context on where we're coming at this from. We're going to jump a little bit into defining your right candidate, air quotes, creating a vision for your company culture, reaching a younger talent pool, effectively marketing your company's unique strengths, and then some closing thoughts. So, I come to you today from the standpoint of someone who gets to walk into numerous facilities every single month. Each of you may have the chance to go to different ones. I don't know where you're coming from with that, but many of the people on this webinar probably just come to their own office each day. And so I'm trying to pull together a culmination of my perspectives from seeing multiple different facilities every single month as a function of my job. And I'm here today as much to spark questions and provoke thoughts than to just share a bunch of statistics. You've probably all sat on numerous webinars where they spew a bunch of statistics at you, and you walk away. But I actually want you to leave today's conversation just with an introspective look at yourself, saying, are we doing this well? Can we make some changes here, whatever it may be? But at the end of the day, I want to get you thinking about your company in a different way than you may currently be doing. You'll notice throughout this slideshow, I keep things lighthearted. I hope you understand that my informal nature is just a reflection of, let's keep it fun. Let's not bog down again with boring statistics and details. We'll certainly have some in here, but I don't want the whole conversation to weigh around those. And lastly, I'd welcome engagement throughout the webinar, and we'll do my best to keep us on track from a timing perspective. So Rust Belt's resume. So 2 years ago, I always tell this story just to, make people laugh. We found out my wife was pregnant on a Thursday night. So on Friday, I did what everyone should do and quit my job and started my own business. Both of us come from families with backgrounds in entrepreneurship, and she basically said, well, you've got a 7-month runway here to build something. So we have built and continue to grow a boutique recruiting agency based in Rocky River, which is on the west side of Cleveland. We have 7 employees. And when I looked at what I wanted this business to be, I had been in recruiting and staffing before. I saw the need for skilled tradespeople in our region. There's obviously a huge shortage in that area, and there's rather than just being generalists, I said let's be really good at what people need rather than being everything to everyone. So our name, Rust Belt, obviously in the past, it took on a negative moniker. We like to say we're trying to put a new shine on the Rust Belt because we believe that name is a source of pride for our region now, and also tells you a little bit about what we do. Obviously, manufacturing is the backbone of Ohio's economy and employment, we're just committed to it. So as Lisa said when she was introducing us, we're the only recruiting and staffing agency that is a part of the OMA, and that is just a further reflection of our commitment to the work that we do. I'm the founder and president. I'm heavily involved in economic and workforce development activities in the Cleveland area, and just very passionate about manufacturing as a whole. Had a experience of my own working for a manufacturer here in Cleveland, and then when I was able to marry that with recruiting, Rust Belt recruiting was born. So I wanted to start out with just a little visual of something that some research that we found. Thomas Network put together a survey of a little over 1,000 people that as to why people would or would not recommend a career in manufacturing. And I wanted to dig into the why they would not recommend. And I don't want to start this webinar off on a negative tone, but I wanted to take the chance to look at what are some of the perceptions. So each of these responses is they could choose as many of these responses as they want. Obviously the numbers aren't going to add up to 100, but each of these responses aren't necessarily our opinion, but it is an external perception, and at some level a reality. So what I challenge you to do here to start is, how is your company going about dispelling some of these notions that get circulated amongst people considering a career in manufacturing? If you're being honest with yourselves, are any of these bullets true about true with your company. And with that, I would ask you to, say, hey, how can we address these? How can we bring these up to par? But on the contrary, if any of these bullets are things where you do a really good job, make sure you're selling those. Sell against the common misconceptions about the industry. So, let's say your company hasn't had a layoff in 25 years. Use that as a selling point. Rather than talking about poor job security and stability, talk about, hey, we're a really stable company, haven't had a layoff in 25 plus years, or we've never had a layoff. Use that as a strength. Take what is in people's minds currently as a negative and turn it into a positive. Hey, we actually benchmark ourselves as the best paying employer in town. We've done we've pulled the data and we are at the top 10% in pay in this county. Hey, we haven't had a workplace injury in 2.5 years. Hey, we have a track of upward mobility and career growth here at our company. All of these things are things that you could take from a negative to a positive. Sell your workplace against what the common misconceptions will be, because it'll be that much more impressive to the individual. So you have to be thinking beyond comp and benefits, but you also have to say, hey, here's some unique things that we do really well as to why you'd want to work here. So sadly, does your facility look like this? Sadly, I don't think I've been in one quite this bad, but we've been in some pretty messy facilities. I'm actually kind of cringing and recoiling over here just even looking at the image. So this, I'm just going to change the page so we don't have to look at this anymore. Or does your facility look like this? Now, obviously, we chose two extremes here, but the truth of the matter is, the cleanliness is something that we see as a major factor in hiring and recruiting in 2019. Some things can't be overcome. Your facility might be what it is. It might be an older facility. You might be dealing with some materials that will make it dirty and messy, but cleanliness has to be a priority. Many manufacturers have a natural element of age, but that doesn't mean a commitment to cleanliness and upkeep can be pushed to the wayside. The cost of cleaning services could be a fraction of what it will be to replace a key employee who got sick of being in a dirty old atmosphere, dark and dingy. Hey, updating that lighting, making sure the cleaning is done. Like, we don't expect you to have a facility like the one we see here on the screen, but certainly don't think you're going to have success if your facility is closer to this than the before. Keep your facility up, make it a place that you're proud of, make it a place that you're saying, hey, we've got a commitment to excellence with our upkeep, and we want this place to be safe, clean, well lit. Make it a place that people want to come to. At the end of the day, when they're arriving for their 6 a.m. shift or their midnight shift, the investment of your facility and the upkeep of it will go further than you might imagine. So moving on, in the conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about, again, I said it earlier, air quotes, the right candidate. Are they out there, or are your expectations? So, we want to talk about them and you. To the left, you'll see what is a purple squirrel. For those that know anything about recruiting and staffing, that's a common term we use for a candidate that's just not out there. A recruiting joke that we use all the time is, a comment that's made in the recruiting industry often is finding a candidate with 5 years of experience in a job function that's only existed for one. Hey, find me someone who has 5 years in 10 years in blockchain. Well, has blockchain been around for 10 years? Now that's not necessarily, an apples to apples example, but the point is, are you being realistic in terms of what you're looking for? So you've got to ask yourself, what does the right candidate actually look to you? Is the behavioral aspects that you're looking for in that candidate what your company prioritizes? What do you look for out of your employees? So when you're looking at this individual, what do you why do those behaviors that you're looking for play into the macro of your company? Are they important to that role? Are they important to the company as a whole? Is it both, or even worse, is it neither? Same with your technical requirements. Why does your hire need 1, 3, 5, 10 years of experience? We challenge those job descriptions that might have been floating around for 15 years. In this tight labor market, there's really not room to sit there and say, hey, we can't take the guy with 4 years of experience because the job description says 5. You've got to ask yourself, what are you expecting out of that 50 year of experience? What difference is that 1 year going to make? Certainly we understand as recruiters the desire to have the most experienced candidate possible, because that brings wisdom and knowledge. But digging into why the requirements are written the way they are when you're hiring goes a really long way. Yeah, and then I just have a note saying, the open-mindedness towards the skill in the job market. When we look at you, how does your company actually look today? Is it a place that has a positive reputation, or are you a revolving door? So, our job as a recruiter, and for many of the people on this call as a hiring manager, is to tell the story of your company and find the fit for the individuals you're talking to. But both you and we need something to work with. You constantly have to be asking yourself, what are we doing to make ourselves attractive to the general public? How are we creating a little positive spin for our workplace? At the end of the day, a job has to get done, but are we creating this environment where we are going to be maximizing productivity? At the end of the day, how do you feel when you walk through the front door of your office? I remember early on, a business we didn't end up doing work with. When I walked into the lobby of their building, there was a dead plant, 2 awards, one from like 1994 and one from 2003, and a couch that looked like even a fraternity house wouldn't accept it. It was awful. And funny enough, I came across another vendor who I mentioned, oh, I saw you work with this company. He goes, yeah, have you ever walked into their lobby? So that is the impression that both of us had without even me bringing it up. And think about how that emanates across everyone who's ever walked into that building. That first impression, that old couch, they'd be better off with no couch than this tired, dingy thing. But they probably walk past it and don't see every day the atmosphere they're creating. The floor wasn't vacuumed, it was dirty. So going back to that cleanliness thing, are they controlling how their company actually looks to the outside? How does your compensation and benefits actually shake out? Are you a have you checked those? Have you benchmarked those lately? How do you constantly check on the state of your workforce? Are you having roundtables with them? Are you sitting and talking with them? To me, an important one, part of our company, is just spending time sitting around the table, whether it's over coffee or a meal, and just saying, how's everyone doing? Where's everyone at? What are we seeing out there? But giving people a voice, and obviously in a company of 300-400 people, that might be more challenging to do, but it gives you the chance to really benchmark how your people are doing. So before I move to my next slide, I'm just going to take 10-15 seconds, if there's any questions, or just give it a pause. And I've come racing out of the gate with a lot of words, so I just want to give a second if anyone's got anything they want to chime in with.
So Taylor, it's Lisa. There aren't any questions typed in at this point, so all good.
Cool. All right, great. Well, moving forward, one thing we wanted to talk about today is culture. That ties right into, what we were talking about a moment ago. Culture is the untapped desire of many companies. This quote has stood out to me because it really puts into words. And truth be told, even though I'm someone who deals with this every day, I was trying to find my own wording for what culture is. And I thought Fast Company put it really well, that culture is the unique collection of beliefs and practices that communicates a company's values, whether or not they've been formalized or articulated. And to that point, um, the statistics a little dated. I'm sure it's shifted a little bit, but 80% of companies do not intentionally craft their company culture. Um, in other words, 20% do. 1 in 5 company is making an intentional effort towards crafting their company culture. So little systemic things, can go such a long way in crafting a culture. And at the end of the day, there needs to be something that defines your company. And when someone walks out of your shop, there needs to be something that they need to be able to articulate in a few easy sentences what it's like to work at and be a part of your company's workplace and culture. I spy with my little eye a company with culture. So, I have a little graphic there to the left, uh, made me laugh, where it said it's gotten to the point where I'm working here to pay for the subscriptions I now require to cope with working here. Hopefully, that's not something that your company has going on. I, uh, you know, but do we have culture? It's up to you to create it. Every company has a culture, whether it's intentionally constructed or not. uh, Again, to that point before, if just because you're not intentionally crafting it doesn't mean you don't have it. And in fact, if you're not intentionally crafting it, you're probably struggling. You're probably having issues on the floor. You're probably you've probably got problems that you may not even realize. And your culture is a top-down output predicated by the environment that the leadership team sets. So you need to be feeding into that culture every single day, which rolls into the next point. How do we get and maintain culture? Well, we maintain and we grow culture no differently than watering a plant. It requires daily maintenance, weekly maintenance, and an intentional culture will allow you to prove morale, retention, and so much more. Something here we have at Rust Belt Recruiting, I have prioritized food as a big part of my culture. And I would say at least once a week, we're sharing a meal or some type of food that's brought into the office. No more than every 2 weeks. I'm running to Chick-fil-A for lunch today to pick up food for the whole team. And we'll sit down and we'll talk and we'll spend some time together. And that's built into the fabric of my culture here at Rust Belt Recruiting. Feeding a whole factory might be a bit more of an undertaking, and doing it once a week might be a challenge. But there are unique ways where you can be doing things to build the culture. Hey, team day. We've got a big weekend of college and NFL football coming up. Everyone wear your team jersey, or have a cook off, or promote some type of offsite participation. Allow them to have a volunteer day in the community where you're kind of getting a 2-for-1 there. You're giving the people a chance to help out the community, and you're also getting some positive PR that you get to tie back to your company. So without a culture, one of the things that can happen is silos within the culture, within the company, not a healthy atmosphere on your floor, which will ultimately trickle over into the quality and the production you're putting out there. Whereas an intentional culture will provide a better workplace, better collaborations, and so many things that will pay dividends on the inputs that you're putting in. When you begin to build towards your ideal vision, the things you ask yourself is, what will it take? What are the costs? What are the outputs? Having everyone wear their team jersey, that's not going to cost you anything. Having a big meal, that's going to cost you something. So you have to decide what that mix is. But in 2019, again, tying back to the beginning of this conversation, with the job market that we are in today, every little thing does play a part, because you don't know who that employee is that you value, that like loves nothing more than wearing his Buckeyes jersey on Friday and letting everyone in the factory know that he is really happy that the Buckeyes are 10-0. So you want to, little things where there was no cost to that might make all the difference to someone, and their choice of where they're going to work. So, 3M is an employer here in Ohio and obviously nationally. And, 3M actually created a culture where that ultimately the Post-it note was born out of. So 3M offers 15% time that allows you to work on creative ideas and projects. The Post-it note came out of that. So obviously that's a pretty big staple in an office. I just opened my desk drawer and looked at a stack of Post-it notes, and they're everywhere. But if 3M wouldn't have created a culture of ideation, creativity, and more, the Post-it note may have never, come to fruition. I'm sure we would have found something like it someday, but 3M created an atmosphere where they were the ones who had it made. And obviously to this day, it is one of the best selling office supplies in the world. All right, so, we're jumping into, a little bit of a different mix now, talking about how we're going to replace this aging workforce. And for me, doing some research on Generation Z actually allowed me to, come up with a few learnings of my own relative to my kids. I've got an 8-year-old, and obviously the baby that I mentioned prompted the start of Rust Belt. And so I got to do some homework. Specifically, what we're looking at here is Generation Z. So again, we all know it, baby boomers are leaving the workforce. So Generation Z was born in 1995 and beyond. So, when I started digging through some articles and reading and doing some research, Generation Z wants room for creativity. They do not want micromanagement. They have an entrepreneurial spirit, which, my wife, as I talked through this presentation with her, challenged me a little bit on. But they want to find a way to do things on their own terms. So you may not see them starting a business in the same way. They might be a little bit more cautious in that regard, but they kind of have some of those traits that are entrepreneurial from the past. They want to have an understanding of the macro and not be pigeonholed. And I think that can be said for millennials too. And they want the transparency in the dealings of the company. It's crazy. This generation has grown up with a phone in their hands and don't know a world without connectivity. They've seen how they are able to, get information really quickly. They want answers. They need to be plugged in to the details. So, how does this relate to you? What have you got in manufacturing in your business? Just take a look at what you have to offer. You have an industry that allows constant creativity. There's constant constant improvement, CI, Kaizens, Kaizens. There are different ways to get involved in manufacturing that caters to a lot of different skill sets. There's obviously room for career development. We've got a shortage of individuals in the industry. And then we're able to, provide them with a steady wage that doesn't lead them to financial ruins like the previous generation with student debt. I think this next generation is really seeing what's going on with the student debt crisis, and I think they're a little bit more averse. And I think the tone is beginning to shift in the high schools about taking on student debt. What are they going to do? I know I talk with my son about it. You know, hey, there are options out there beyond college. So manufacturing can offer them a debt-free solution out of high school, you know, with a long and prosperous career to follow. Parents, you know, need to be having those conversations with them, but these are, to the right, you know, unique things that you can be selling as a benefit of your company every single day. You plus them equals us. So put yourself in their shoes, you know, your future workforce's shoes. What would be important to you? What is important to you? You know, is it the start and end time that you might have in the office? Why, you know, there, these things that I list up here, we're not necessarily saying they're right or wrong. We're just saying, why do they exist? Because people that are coming into manufacturing are going to say, well, my friend Johnny or Susie over there took a job with a really cool company that has unlimited vacation time. Well, I think we can all agree that that might not be a best route for manufacturing, especially when you're in a production facility. But which of these can you offer? What is important to you? What led you to your company? You know, because they're going to ask a lot of questions and they're going to expect answers. It goes back to that previous slide on transparency. You know, why do we start at 6 a.m.? Why do we have to be here at the crack of dawn? Well, we've always done it that way. Okay, well, they're not going to respond to that as well. Whereas, hey, there's a semi that gets here every day at 4:30 to pick up everything you guys made, and that's when the company is able to pick them up, and that's when they're able to move it out. Boom, you've answered it. You have an answer to this question. You know, hey, why aren't we offered better health benefits? Well, you know, hey, if you look at the macro, so helping these people, these newer up next coming generation, answer questions that they have will go a longer way than just them brushing them aside and saying that's the way it's always been. So these are questions, you know, asking yourself, looking at everything your business does and being able to say this is why we do it this way is going to go a lot better than saying that's just how we do it. So moving over here, we've got a favorite quote of mine from Dr. Seuss. You know, it doesn't tie directly in, but I can bring it back around. Today you are you, that is truer than true. There is no one alive who is youer than you. And that's true about a company too. You are who you are. You know, you are exactly who you are. So talk about the authentic company you are. Don't paint, you know, a Picasso if you're just a stick figure drawing. You know, at the end of the day, sell on the aspects of your company that truly exist, because that retention is gonna increase if you're really painting a realistic and authentic picture of your workplace to the people before they come in. So telling everyone that, you know, if you're a company of silos and you end up telling them that they are a company of, you know, everyone is best friends, and then they come in and after their first week no one talks to each other, there's going to be red flags going off on their head immediately. You know, sell on unique things that might exist in your company. Hey, every Friday our president walks the floor and talks with each person. Knowing he cares to know the employees and seeing how he takes action when things come up, that makes working here special. That's not something that's going to be in a job description. That's not going to be something that's going to be in a benefits section, but those are the aspects of your company that are going to differentiate you from the company down the street where it is known that the leadership team is genuinely invested in the work that each person is doing. And some benefits are easy to look right past. Hey, we're only 2 blocks from the interstate and I'm home in less than 10 minutes. Knowing where that person, knowing what the benefit for that person is huge. I remember I used to work in a job that was on the other side of town. And if I didn't get if I got on the highway in time, it took me 41 minutes to get there. If I was 5 minutes behind for, getting out the door, it took me about an hour and 6 minutes. Well, ultimately, I then found a new job that was 5 minutes from my house. So I regained about an hour and a half to 2 hours of my day just by taking that job. They didn't use that as a unique selling point to me, but to me, when I was sitting there evaluating the job opportunity, that meant the world to me. So you've got to look at each candidate and you've got to be able to creatively identify what's important to them. Hey, I've got to go home every day at lunch to feed my dog. And being a mile away from home makes that so much easier. I used to really struggle to get it down to the minute to get home and feed my dog and race back. So in this, again, we've said it a couple times today, in this tight labor market, you're going to need to differentiate your company beyond comp and medical benefits. Something I wrote down here is we deal with the most complex product in the world, which is human capital. There are so many variables that come in and out that affect, not only our decision making but theirs, and we just need to be able to control the factors that are important to us when we're looking at hiring. And hey, what's going on with you, what's important to you. Asking those questions are going to make getting the right people into your facility that much easier. So a closing thought, of mine, not of mine, of Jack Welch's, but a closing thought that I enjoyed is no company, small or large, can win over the long run without energized employees who believe in the mission and understand how to achieve it. Obviously, Jack Welch is renowned for his leadership, and this quote could not be more true. That leadership goes a really long way in, building a culture, energizing your employees, and creating a workplace where they're going to be able to achieve great things for themselves and obviously for the company as a whole. So, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to open it up once more for questions. Please send me your feedback. I'd love to hear it. I wish you the best in the continued development of your company. And then certainly let us know if we can ever be of assistance to you. I've included my contact info there at the bottom. And at this time, again, I'm good to wait a minute or two and take some questions and see if anyone wants to chime in.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. So no questions in file right now, but I'm going to give that a few minutes. Type things in, and somebody's got, or I can unmute you and we can hear you. All of us can hear you live. And I'm sure somebody has a challenge for Taylor. Maybe I'll voice a challenge that we hear a lot among our membership. And how do you think about the whole substance issue that so many people are having trouble gaining employment because they can't pass that drug test, so important to the safety of a company? And how are you thinking about that?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, substance abuse is something that's near and dear to my heart. I think we obviously, it's the understatement of the year to say that we have an issue with it here in Ohio with the opioid crisis and things of the sort. But substance abuse is disheartening. It's because at the end of the day, you want to help these people, and the workplace is a place where there are a lot of resources in place to help the individual. But if they show up with a failed drug test, that's obviously going to raise a concern with the potential to hire them. Second chance hires are a great thing, and where it's possible, it's fantastic. But at the end of the day, companies have to have a policy in place that's going to keep for a safe workplace. You know, if someone is going to show up stoned or high or, you know, under the influence, there's a ton of risk that goes into that. So I don't think it's that these employers are being unreasonable. You know, at the end of the day, they're not sitting at a desk working on a laptop, you know, where a dust bunny is going to trip them. They're working around multi-ton presses. They're working around extremely dangerous materials. So when it comes to substance abuse, I think you know, first of all, drug and alcohol, those tests have to occur. And, you know, we had a disheartening one once where one of our clients had hired the guy and he showed up to his Tuesday afternoon at 12:30 uh, uh, drug and physical test, and he blew a .06. And you know, at the end of the day, that's Tuesday at 12:30, and his reasoning was, oh, I had a few beers last night with a buddy. You know, hey, that would have been out of your system before last night. You know, you had a few beers with breakfast. And what is disheartening there is if he does have a drug and alcohol problem, our client, you know, we sat across from them saying, hey, you know, we could have helped him if he would have just gotten in here and been sober. We have a program for drug and alcohol. So I think it's really important for companies to have a plan for that. You know, how are we going to help individuals? But I also am not a believer that it needs to put an undue strain on the employer. Um,
Yeah, that's
is
fair.
is that sufficient?
That's fair. Thank you for that. No more questions in file right now. I want to let our folks know that we did record today's webinar. So if there's somebody in your facility that you think would be interested in hearing this back and they weren't available today, you'll find it in the OMA video library. And here comes a couple questions. So let's pick these up. Martha wants to know if you have any advice on how to build your skilled trades pipeline in high school students, in these Generation Z high school students. Build the pipeline in high school.
Yeah. And the question was asked by Martha.
Yeah.
Martha, I would say if you're building your skilled trades pipeline starting in high school, you might already be too late. You know, I think community involvement, first of all, is one of those positive reputation things that you can have from a very young age. Can you know, and again, your company will have the resources that it will, but can you be getting in front of these students at third, fourth, fifth grade? Can you be planting a seed in their minds that is much sooner and earlier? But yeah, building a pipeline, you know, getting your name out there, having the chance, you know, the NAM, National Association of Manufacturers, does a great job with Manufacturing Day every year. This year it was on October 4th, and I would say opening your doors up and getting some students through your doors and showing them the wonders of manufacturing is a great way, an easy way, a soft way to get involved, and just welcoming them in and giving them the chance to, um, you know, see your facility, be involved with your facility, and have them say, "That's my employer of choice." You know, when I get out of here, at the end of the day, there's creative ways to celebrate them. You know, if you're able to hire a high school student, I saw a cool event that happened maybe a year, maybe it's 2 years ago now, down in Virginia. You know, just like we celebrate our athletes for their National Signing Day, you can have a signing day at your facility where, you know, it's nothing more than signing their employment agreement or just signing a pretend piece of paper, but take some pictures, invite their family, celebrate them. You know, it's an accomplishment for them, and they need to be celebrated as, hey, you were a top draft pick for us, just like we celebrate our athletes. But building that pipeline is going to come down to constantly being involved with your technical and vocational schools in your area, and then working with them to make sure your name is known by those students. You know, if Martha, I don't know about your company, but you know, if there was welding in your facility, you might have your weld managers go teach a class, over at their facility and talk about the technical requirements that you have at your job and spark that interest. So, you know, just like with me, with raising my son, you've got to be involved in their lives and make it feel like, hey, these guys care about me and they're interested in me and they've been invested in me for multiple years. So it's like the phrase I used earlier, it's not apples to apples to say you're going to be the parent to these high schoolers, but you're certainly going to be entrenched in their lives and get to know them and make them feel wanted and valued the same way the high school football star is being courted by the Buckeyes or whoever else.
Sounds good. And then there are industry sector partnerships, which are collaborations of manufacturers popping up all over Ohio, where manufacturers getting together, sharing best practices and challenges and helping each other and finding resources to make things happen. If you're interested in that, make sure you email OMA and we'll get you connected with the nearest local industry sector partnership to you. There's a
Yeah,
question.
that's a great commitment by the state of Ohio, and that they are regional, so they're able to meet the unique needs of each community. And obviously, manufacturing is one of the lanes, and I think maybe healthcare and IT are the other two. Am I right with that, Lisa?
Well, for our purposes today, definitely the state and your OMA totally focused on manufacturers.
Yeah, I'm just saying that the state of Ohio has made a commitment to a couple high priority lanes that people are needed in the workforce right now.
Here's a question from Cheryl that's burning up a number of you, no doubt. It's how do you handle the old school management that doesn't want to add the new benefits, that thinks they're fluffy, doesn't want to spend the money upgrading things and making a top-notch employer of choice workplace?
Yeah.
How should Cheryl think about that with her management problem?
Absolutely. So let me relate it back to a client of ours that is part of a union. They're connected to one of the national unions, and they have a policy where if you aren't hired before April of that year, then you aren't eligible for PTO, 1 week of PTO, until not the beginning of the next year. So if someone wasn't hired there before the end of April 2019, they wouldn't be eligible for a week of paid time off, 5 days, until January of 2021. So 20 months. I don't need to explain to you that how much that hinders them. And yet the mindset of the people that have been there for 30, 35 years who did their dues in the union are, hey, we had to go through it. Well, sadly, that's just not we don't have the workforce today that, existed 30 years ago. If you need a maintenance technician and they're deciding between those two, that might be the tipping point, and it might have been a great individual that you wanted at your facility. So at some point, at some level, Cheryl, it's going to take some internal diplomacy. It's going to say it's going to be sitting those people down and saying, look, we know you had to go through the workforce this way. This is what our neighbor down the street is offering, and frankly, we're losing it. We're losing good candidates to them. And you might even say, what would be the tipping point for you to get on board with this change internally? Why, how can we make this work? So at the end of the day, it's going to take some diplomacy of just sitting down and saying, let's reason this out together. What would be the best choice, or what would be the best course of action in your eyes, so that we can be competitive and that this company is positioned for success long term? So that's going to come with leadership and diplomacy of being able to talk with those old school managers. And if that old school manager per se is the top dog, it's going to take a different set of diplomacy to say, look, again, we are missing on top talent because this is what the rest of the workforce, or this is what the rest of the local economy is offering to the workforce, and we need your buy-in to continue to sustain and grow this company.
Yeah, good question. Probably burning in the hearts of several of the people on the line. Now, I do know that we have we've blown by our 10:45 stop time that we promised you. There aren't any more questions in file. Please follow up with Taylor after the fact. Not necessarily to engage Rust Belt recruiting, but he's just a nice guy, and he'd enjoy kicking around a problem with you.
I really do. At the end of the day, if you call me, it's not going to be a sales pitch. It's not going to be a hey, here's our contract if you want to talk to me further. I'm happy to have these conversations and really just engage for the sake of bettering our workforce. It's the commitment we've made as a company to do good by and for our region, and we trust that the business will stay afloat if we operate in that way. So I'm humbled and grateful for all of you who joined us on this call today, and again, my contact info can be seen on the screen, and I'd appreciate having further of these conversations. They're life-giving to me, and it's certainly there's no shortage of complexity in figuring out all these issues to continue to grow our workforce. So thank you for joining us today. I do appreciate it, and I look forward to being in touch with some of you in the future.
Thanks, Taylor. Thanks for great food for thought, great self-examination of our workforce, our workplaces. So one last thing. This afternoon, my colleague Denise, is going to send everybody a quick survey. It takes 30 seconds to fill it out. We read every one of them. They're really valuable to us. So you can tell us how we did with this program today, and you can tell us what else you want to learn about so we can get that lined up for you in 2020. And with that, let's leave it there for today, and I wish everybody a good, safe day.